My name is Amanda, and I saved every penny for years, thinking that soon I will have my own house. But when my parents and sister found out about the money, they wanted to destroy my dream. What I uncovered later would shake the very foundation of what I thought family meant. So grab a cup of something warm, and let me take you back to the moment it all began. I should have known something was off by the way my sister's fork clinked against her plate. We were all gathered in my parents' cozy dining room in Minneapolis, Mom's homemade lasagna steaming on the table, the scent of garlic bread softening the early winter chill outside. It was one of those rare Sunday dinners where everyone was actually smiling, eating, laughing like nothing could crack this picture-perfect moment. And then I spoke. "I did it," I said, grinning like a little kid. "I finally saved enough for a down payment. Just got pre-approved this morning." My heart swelled just saying the words out loud. Years of pinching pennies as a data analyst, skipping takeout, working every holiday, I had done it. I was about to buy my first home. A modest townhouse in a quiet neighborhood, nothing fancy, but it would be mine, my safe place. My start, I expected excitement. A toast, maybe even a proud hug from Dad. Instead, Kayla, the younger of us by 3 years, froze mid-bite. Her jaw clenched. Then came the eye roll. "Oh, please," she snapped, setting her fork down a little too hard. "You're not some financial genius, Amanda. You just got lucky. No husband, no kids, no real responsibilities." The silence that followed was sharp. My mother blinked rapidly, pretending to check the lasagna. My father shifted in his chair. No one said a word. It was like Kayla had just flicked a switch and sucked all the warmth out of the room. "Lucky," I managed, forcing a smile that felt foreign on my face. "You think saving for 10 years on one income is luck? Come on, Amanda," she huffed. "You live alone in a one-bedroom apartment. You've never had to juggle daycare, marriage, or—" She gestured vaguely toward the hallway where her 2 toddlers were napping. "You chose that life," I said quietly. "I chose mine," Kayla snorted. "Yeah, easy to choose when Mom and Dad are always bailing you out." Wait, what? My breath caught in my throat. Bail me out. I had never once asked them for help. If anything, I had refused their offers. I glanced at my parents, still silent. My mother stirred her iced tea as if the swirling sugar would summon the courage to intervene. My father. He studied the crumbs on his plate. And there it was, that slow, creeping feeling of being alone in a room full of people who were supposed to love you. I don't remember much of the rest of the dinner, just the way Kayla wouldn't look me in the eye, and the heaviness in my chest that followed me out to my car. What had just happened? On the drive home, my fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual. The trees lining the street blurred past. All I could hear was Kayla's voice ringing in my ears. "Lucky." That word sank like a stone in my stomach. Not smart, not disciplined, just lucky. I should have let it go. I should have chalked it up to sibling pettiness and moved on. But something about her tone. It wasn't just jealousy. It was something worse. It was premeditated. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of the conversation. It was the start of a storm I hadn't seen coming. I barely slept that night. I kept replaying Kayla's words in my head, trying to scrub them off my joy like soap on a stained shirt. But they stuck. They always do when they come from someone who knows just where to jab. Still, morning came, and with it, something new. Bright, sharp sunlight filtered through my blinds, and despite the lingering ache in my chest, I felt the whisper of excitement return. Today was for me. I met my realtor, Shannon, outside a set of townhomes just outside of St. Paul, my favorite neighborhood, lined with dogwood trees and walkable sidewalks. We'd picked 2 listings to tour, both within budget, both dreamy in their own little ways. The first had a bay window that caught the morning sun just right, making the hardwood floors gleam like a secret waiting to be told. The kitchen was small, but charming. White tile, a deep farmhouse sink, and a quirky little breakfast nook that reminded me of the books I used to read as a kid. I stood there, picturing a coffee mug steaming beside my laptop, my plants catching light on the sill. The second place had a tiny fenced-in yard and an extra bedroom that could double as an office. That one caught me off guard. It was the kind of space that invited dreams. I could see myself there, baking on a quiet Sunday, working from home with soft music playing, hanging twinkle lights along the porch just because I could. Shannon chatted numbers and comps, but I barely heard her. I was lost in it. For once, the world didn't feel like something I had to muscle through. It felt like it might finally be opening its hand and offering me something real. I even laughed, the kind of laugh that sneaks up on you when you're not carrying everything. "This is really happening," I whispered aloud to myself while standing in the upstairs hallway of the second place. Shannon smiled. "It is, and honestly, Amanda, you've earned this." Those words, they stayed with me, because unlike Kayla's casual dismissal, Shannon's tone held no edge, no resentment, just truth. Someone saw me, not as lucky, not as undeserving, but as someone who'd clawed her way here with spreadsheets, side gigs, and Sunday mornings spent meal prepping instead of brunching. After the tour, I drove to the park nearby, bought a coffee from the little stand by the lake, and sat on a bench, letting the Minnesota wind tangle through my hair. I breathed in slow and deep. It smelled like leaves, crisp air, and possibilities. No guilt, no judgment, just silence and space. I pulled out the folder I kept tucked in my bag, a collection of savings, projections, pre-approval letters, and my someday sketches. They weren't just dreams anymore. They were plans, tangible, achievable. I'd made this happen. It wasn't flashy or dramatic, but it was mine. Every dollar in that account came from years of not giving up, even when it would have been easier to settle for less. And now I could almost taste the freedom. Funny how money, when it's yours and untouched by anyone else's hands, doesn't just buy you things. It buys you dignity, peace of mind, the ability to say, "I did this," and know it's true. I started doodling in the margins of my planner, paint colors, where I'd put the couch, whether I'd finally adopt that rescue dog I'd bookmarked 6 times but never dared to call about. I even let myself imagine holidays in my own space. No parental commentary about my single status. No Kayla hogging attention with her motherhood martyrdom. Just me, maybe a few close friends, candles flickering and music playing low. Peaceful, chosen. I stayed on that bench for nearly an hour, sipping slowly, letting myself linger in the vision. Because after last night, I knew the road ahead might not be smooth. Families don't let go of their power easily. And Kayla, well, something in her eyes last night made it clear she wasn't done. But that didn't matter. Not right now. Right now, I was standing on the edge of something beautiful. And for once, I wasn't afraid to jump. That night, I fell asleep smiling. A real, deep kind of smile. The kind that lingers even after you've drifted off. My apartment was a mess of open folders and real estate flyers, with half a dozen sticky notes taped to the wall in a makeshift vision board. It was chaotic, colorful, and entirely mine. I had a candle burning, something lavender-scented and wildly overpriced, but I didn't care. The soft flicker of it made my tiny studio feel like a sanctuary. My laptop buzzed with saved listings. My phone was full of calendar alerts for inspections and bank calls. I hadn't felt this alive in years. It was more than a new chapter. It was a rewrite. There was something deliciously quiet about the evening. No family group texts, no Kayla drama, no guilt hiding in the corners. Just me, a mug of sleep-a-time tea, and the idea that maybe, finally, I was building something that didn't require anyone else's approval. I climbed into bed with my favorite throw blanket wrapped around me, the one with the threadbare edges and a few stubborn coffee stains. I kept the lights dim and let my mind drift to all the tiny things I was excited for. The welcome mat I wanted to buy that said Homebody HQ, a herb garden on the windowsill. Hosting a movie night where I didn't have to explain why I'd rather serve charcuterie than cook a real dinner. The idea of having people over, or not, just because I could. Even the thought of assembling IKEA furniture alone brought a small thrill. That's how starved I was for ownership over my life. And maybe that's what made me so vulnerable. Because while I was dreaming of furniture placement and rosemary pots, I didn't know what had already begun to stir elsewhere. Not yet. The next morning was tinted with the same glow. I didn't even mind the sound of traffic outside. Everything felt like a signal, a green light. I made myself a celebratory breakfast. Eggs, toast, and exactly 3 strawberries left in my fridge. I played music as I got ready, danced around in my socks while brushing my teeth, and answered an email from my lender confirming that we were clear for next week's closing. It was happening. This time, no one could steal it. At least that's what I told myself. Around noon, I walked to the corner cafe for my usual weekend latte. The barista, Tori, smiled when she saw me. "Big plans today?" she asked as she frothed the milk. "You could say that," I grinned. "I'm buying a house," she blinked. "No way, that's amazing. You look different, glowing, even," I laughed. "Must be the caffeine." But it wasn't. It was freedom. For the first time in ages, I didn't feel like I had to apologize for who I was. I wasn't someone's older daughter, the single sibling, the selfish one who chose work over chaos. I was Amanda Lane, 31, data analyst, future homeowner, survivor of Sunday dinners that bite. I stopped at the hardware store on the way home, just to look, I told myself, but I ended up buying 3 paint swatches and a tiny potted succulent that I named Moxie. She sat on the kitchen windowsill, facing the sun like she already belonged. I spent the afternoon on my laptop, combing through DIY blogs, bookmarking backsplash inspiration, and even finding a coupon for a second-hand furniture store. I was humming, literally humming, when I caught myself in the mirror. There was a lightness in my eyes I hadn't seen since college. And that night, when I turned off my phone and curled up in bed, I whispered aloud to no one but the dark, "This is mine, all of it." It felt like a promise, a declaration, and I meant it. It started like so many conversations with my mother do. Gentle voice, soft eyes, the kind of performance that looks like concern but feels like choreography. I was standing in her kitchen, sipping the herbal tea she insisted on brewing as soon as I arrived. She called it just a quick chat, the kind that's not supposed to take more than a few minutes. But the moment she slid the sugar bowl closer and sat down across from me, I felt the shift, that invisible tightening of the air. "Amanda," she began, tucking her hair behind her ear, "I'm so proud of you." A statement like that on the surface should have been heartening, but something about her tone made it feel more like a prelude than a compliment. "You've worked so hard," she continued. "Really, and you know how much we all want you to be happy." There it was, the we. I stirred my tea slowly, already bracing. She folded her hands. "I just wanted to talk to you about Kayla." "Of course. She's been under so much stress lately, sweetie. 2 kids, Jake working 12-hour shifts, and she's just not coping as well as she says." I said nothing. "She was crying yesterday," Mom added with a faint, performative sigh. "She didn't want me to tell you, but you know Kayla, she tries to act strong." I let that sit for a moment before responding. "What does this have to do with me?" Mom smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Well, she's really struggling financially. The bills, the kids' needs, and with the medical stuff last year, it's just been one thing after another." I knew this wasn't a conversation. It was a setup. Still, I waited. "She doesn't know I'm asking you this," she said, leaning in. "But Amanda, have you thought about maybe helping her out a little?" I blinked. "With what?" I asked, though I already knew. "Well, with your house savings and all, you're in such a good place," she said gently. "And Kayla, she's drowning, honey. Even just a few thousand could give them breathing room. It's not like you need all of it right now, and no." My voice was soft but certain. Mom looked surprised, as if the thought of me denying a request like this had never crossed her mind. I didn't flinch. "I've worked too hard for this," I continued. "Kayla and I made different choices. I'm not punishing her, I'm just finally choosing myself." She opened her mouth to object, but I raised a hand. "I love my family, but I'm not giving away my future because someone else dropped theirs." A silence stretched between us, and then my phone buzzed. I glanced down, an unknown number. Before I could answer it, Mom reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. "I just don't want this to cause distance between you and Kayla," she said quietly. "She already feels like you think you're better than her." That stung more than I expected. I pulled my hand away. "I don't think I'm better. I think I'm tired of pretending that sacrificing for others is the only way to prove I care." She looked at me, studying my face like she didn't recognize the woman in front of her. And maybe she didn't. Maybe she hadn't realized I was changing, or that I'd stopped confusing loyalty with self-erasure. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. This time, a name flashed across the screen: Noah Jensen, an old colleague from my last firm. "Excuse me," I said, rising from the table. "I have to take this." Outside on the porch, the cold air slapped me awake. I answered the call. "Amanda," Noah's voice was chipper. "You still freelancing?" I blinked. "Here and there, why?" "Well, I'm building a project team for a tech startup. It's part-time, remote, and they pay well. I remember your budgeting skills were gold. Want me to pass your name along?" I felt my heart skip. "Yes, yes, please." It was like the universe was saying, "Keep your spine straight. I've got you." I hung up, adrenaline rushing. The timing of the offer was uncanny. Just when my savings felt vulnerable, this lifeline appeared. Inside, Mom was clearing the cups, her expression unreadable. I didn't mention the call. Didn't need to, because I already knew this wasn't over. This was the opening volley. That evening, I found myself back at my parents' house again. This time, it was dinner. Casual, they said. Nothing big, just a meal with the whole family. I should have known that meant Kayla would be there. She arrived late, as usual, trailing 2 diaper bags and a toddler screaming about socks. Her husband Jake didn't come, apparently working late. Again, Kayla looked tired, but beneath her exhaustion was something else. A flicker of something familiar, calculated vulnerability. We sat at the table, my parents at either end, me to the right, Kayla across. The smell of baked chicken filled the room, but I barely tasted it. Every time I lifted my fork, I caught Kayla's eyes darting to me, then to our mother. The small talk sputtered. Weather, traffic, something about a neighbor's new deck. Then Kayla placed her fork down and looked right at me. "So I heard you're buying a house," she said, tone flat but smile forced. I nodded. "Working on it." "Must be nice," she muttered, but not quietly enough. I paused. "What do you mean?" Kayla sighed, theatrically, brushing her hair out of her face. "Just saying. It must be nice to have that kind of freedom. To not have to worry about daycare or insurance or stretching one income for 4 people. My mother gave her a warning glance, but Kayla pressed on. "Jake's working himself sick and we're still drowning in medical bills. Did Mom tell you? Tyler had that ear infection that wouldn't go away, and insurance only covered half the meds." She wasn't talking to me. She was building a stage. I set my fork down. "Kayla," I said carefully, "I'm sorry you're having a hard time, but I'm not responsible for your bills." Her face fell into a well-practiced look of wounded disbelief. "Wow, I wasn't asking you to be responsible, I was just sharing." "You shared last week too," I replied, "and the week before." My dad cleared his throat. He hadn't said a word all evening. "Girls," he began, "let's keep this civil." But that was all he said. No defense, no fairness. Just enough to sound neutral, but not enough to challenge anything. Kayla picked up her water glass. Her fingers trembled just enough to catch our mother's attention. "You know," she said, voice catching slightly, "not everyone gets to choose their life. Some of us do what we have to." It was quiet for a beat. Then she added, "Not all of us get to decorate our lives with paint palettes and Instagram-worthy independence." That one stung. I'd shown my mother some of the color samples yesterday, excitedly, innocently. I hadn't realized she'd passed that on. I sat back in my chair, suddenly aware of how the room felt tight, like I'd stepped into a play where everyone knew the script except me. "I didn't choose anything to spite you," I said softly. "I chose myself." And that's when my mother spoke, gently but with precision. "She's just saying, Amanda, that maybe it's time to consider what family means, what sacrifice looks like." I laughed. I didn't mean to. It just escaped, a short, sharp exhale. "Funny," I said, "because sacrifice usually goes both ways." No one responded. I looked at my father. "Anything you want to add?" He met my gaze, then looked down at his plate. "It's not my place." Not his place. I almost stood up right then, almost walked out. But I didn't. I stayed seated. I stayed calm. Because suddenly I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry. I was taking inventory. And I was starting to see the full equation. How silence could be as loud as betrayal. How pity could be weaponized. And how someone could chip away at your dream one guilt-tinged dinner at a time. I finished my meal quietly, then excused myself before dessert. On the drive home, the streetlights blurred through the windshield. My hands shook on the wheel, but not from rage, from clarity. They weren't going to ask. They were going to expect without ever saying it directly. And the pressure wouldn't come with shouting. It would come like this. A look, a sigh, a story about unpaid bills, a comment about paint palettes. They were playing the long game. But so was I. I didn't answer anyone's texts for 3 days. Not Mom's follow-ups, not Kayla's guilt-laced, just checking-in messages, not even the group thread where my father occasionally dropped weather reports like emotional grenades. I turned my phone on silent, moved it to the kitchen drawer, and focused on something I could control. My budget. There's something sacred about spreadsheets. Columns don't lie. They don't pout. They don't accuse you of being selfish. They just sit there, full of cold logic and silent reassurance. I spent hours combing through every transaction, every saved receipt. I updated my post-closing budget and trimmed non-essentials. Subscription boxes, overpriced hair products, and the online cooking class I never actually watched. And then I color-coded everything. Blue for fixed costs, green for cushion income, red for under no circumstances should this money move. That column, marked in crimson, was my future. And I stared at it for a long time, reminding myself what it had taken to build. The skipped vacations, the lonely holidays, The 2 a.m. freelance contracts I took while everyone else slept. That money didn't just represent a house. It represented me, and I wasn't going to surrender it in the name of performative compassion. On Thursday night, Lee showed up. We hadn't seen each other in nearly a year, but she messaged out of the blue. "Hey, I'm in town. You home? I have wine and gossip." Lee was my roommate in college, a financial analyst with a laugh that could crack glass and a habit of speaking truth faster than anyone could brace for it. If you were spiraling, Lee was the person who'd pour you a glass of Merlot, pull up a chart, and say, "Let's fix it." She arrived with a pizza box under one arm and her laptop in the other. "I brought carbs and capitalism," she announced, slipping off her coat. "Now tell me everything." So I did, about the house, the family dinners, the ask that wasn't an ask, about Kayla's performance and my mother's manipulative silence, about the tension coiling under my skin like a wire waiting to snap. Lee didn't interrupt. She just listened, nodding slowly until I finally said, "And the worst part, I still feel guilty." She leaned forward. "Why?" "Because they need help," I admitted. "And part of me still thinks maybe I should be doing more." Lee blinked. "Amanda, needing help doesn't entitle someone to rob you of your progress. Needing help doesn't make them morally superior to someone who planned ahead." She opened her laptop and dragged it toward me. "You want to see what guilt does?" she asked. "It delays wealth building by decades. It hijacks compound interest. It destroys independence. And worst of all, it convinces smart women they don't deserve what they've earned." I swallowed hard. "Your family isn't asking for help. They're demanding your sacrifice. That's not the same thing." We built a post-closing scenario together, refining my financial goals, padding my emergency fund, planning for repairs and insurance. Lee added columns I hadn't considered, like future property taxes and HOA fees. By the end of the night, I had a fully armored plan, and something better, a witness to my worth. "Promise me," she said, closing her laptop. "If they come back, and they will, you won't let them touch a dime." "I promise." She looked at me, then grinned. "Now let's pick your future couch." We stayed up late scrolling through furniture catalogs, mocking overpriced ottomans and debating between seafoam green and burnt orange. It was stupid, warm, grounding, exactly what I didn't know I needed. When Lee finally left, I stood at the window watching the taillights disappear. I felt clearer than I had in weeks. This wasn't just about a house. It was about refusing to live in the shadows of guilt. It was about building something that no one, not even my family, could shake loose with tears or silent stares. And for the first time, I believed I could win this. The message came on a Sunday morning, innocent, casual, impossible to ignore. "Mom, come home for just one chat, sweetheart, just you and me. Promise. No mention of Kayla, no group dinner, no emotional pit traps, just a chat." I almost didn't go, but guilt has a funny way of masquerading as grace. It whispers things like maybe she just wants to understand, or what if this time is different? So I went. I even brought muffins from the bakery she loved, cinnamon walnut, warm and crumbling at the edges, a peace offering, or maybe just armor dressed in brown paper. The house smelled the same. Lemons, floor polish, a touch of laundry detergent in the air. A place that still wore my childhood like a memory stitched into the walls. My mother greeted me at the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She pulled me into a quick hug and led me to the kitchen, where sunlight streamed through the curtains like everything was fine. The table was already set with tea. She poured without asking, classic jasmine, the kind I stopped drinking years ago. "So," I said, settling into my chair. "What's the chat?" She sat down across from me, hands folded in a way that made her look almost shy. "I've been thinking," she said, "about how things have been between you and Kayla. Here we go. I know it's been hard," she continued. "She's emotional, you're focused, different strengths, different needs." I stayed quiet. She took a sip of her tea. "She's been struggling, and sometimes she doesn't express herself well." "That's one way to put it." Mom smiled faintly. "She misses you. She misses my savings." That smile disappeared. "That's not fair," she said gently. "Kayla's been through a lot. She's scared, and when people are scared, they act out." "Mom," I said, folding my arms, "if this is going where I think it's going—" "I just want to talk," she interrupted. "Please." I stared at the steam curling from my mug. The air felt warmer suddenly, thicker. Mom's voice dropped to that careful, soft register that used to calm me when I was 8 and had scraped my knees. You have a beautiful opportunity, Amanda, a fresh start, stability, and I'm proud of you, I truly am, but maybe there's room in that fresh start to extend some grace. Grace, I echoed. For your sister. And there it was, I looked up. What exactly are you asking? She sighed. She and Jake are facing foreclosure. The loan officer suggested a short-term family trust to stabilize things, just to tide them over until the next tax season. My stomach dropped. A trust, I repeated slowly. With what funds? Well, she reached into the drawer and pulled out a document. We thought maybe it could include your down payment as a temporary guarantee, just on paper. Nothing would happen to it, Amanda. It would still be yours, but it would allow Kayla to refinance. I couldn't breathe for a moment. You want me to tie my savings to their debt? Just as a gesture, she said quickly. A show of solidarity, it won't be touched. I stood up. No, her face flickered shock, confusion, then something darker. Amanda, she said sharply, sit down, but I was already stepping back. This wasn't a chat, I said. This was a setup. She rose too, her voice no longer gentle. You're overreacting. We're family, we help each other. I shook my head. No, Mom, you guilt each other, you leverage each other. Her lips parted, stunned. I grabbed my coat. I brought muffins, I said quietly, but I see you had something else baked. She didn't follow me out, didn't call after me. But as I closed the front door behind me, I caught her voice, low, angry, barely audible through the crack. She's become so cold. And maybe she was right. Or maybe I was just finally done letting warmth be the currency used to burn me. I woke up glowing. The kind of glow that only comes when you're hours away from a long-held dream. The kind that made me hum while brushing my teeth, that had me twirling my coffee spoon in rhythm with the clink of possibility. It was house closing day. After a decade of budgeting apps, skipped happy hours, and tax spreadsheets filed with surgical precision, I had made it. Today was supposed to be the celebration of everything I'd built brick by quiet brick. I triple-checked my bag. ID, down payment instructions, lender paperwork, and the little good luck charm Lee had gifted me last night. A tiny metal key on a chain. For your real one soon, she'd said with a wink. I sat at the edge of my bed, took a breath, and opened my banking app. And everything stopped. Funds unavailable. Please contact customer service. At first, I didn't understand. My hand hovered frozen. I refreshed the page. Logged out, logged in again. Nothing changed. The number that should have been there, 6 figures, my future, was replaced by an icy gray error banner. Unavailable. I didn't panic right away. I just stared. Then came the adrenaline. My ears started to ring as I fumbled to call the bank. The wait music was chirpy, obnoxiously bright. I gripped the phone like a lifeline. Finally, a voice answered. Thank you for calling, this is Sarah. How can I assist you today? My savings account is showing as frozen, I said, the tremor in my voice giving me away. I need to know what's happening immediately. She asked for verification. I gave it. She paused, clicked keys. The silence stretched too long. I'm seeing a trust account linked to your profile, she said slowly. It appears the funds were pledged as collateral for a secured loan. That loan has defaulted. Due to the terms of the agreement, all trust-related assets have been locked. My heart dropped. What trust account? I asked. I don't have one. She hesitated. The records show your name was added as a co-trustee last month. I can send over the signed documentation. I never signed anything, I whispered. I'm sorry, ma'am, we have legal paperwork on file. The signature matches your driver's license record. My stomach twisted. I couldn't hear anything for a few seconds. My pulse was in my ears. She kept talking. Words like forfeiture clause, default protection, and shared liability. I heard only one thing: they'd taken it. They'd taken everything. Not in the future, not in theory, now, and I had let them get close enough to do it. I ended the call and sat very still. The app was still open on my phone, mocking me. Unavailable. I couldn't call the title agent. Couldn't call my realtor. What was I supposed to say? Sorry, my family leveraged my savings behind my back and now the deal is off. I slid to the floor and stared at nothing. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Because crying would have meant accepting that it was real. Instead, I lay there with my coat still on, heart racing, fists clenched as the closing time came and went. 1:00 p.m. When I was supposed to have keys in my hand, instead all I had was silence. The first tear came around 2:15 p.m. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic, it just slipped out, followed by another, then another. And then I was sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. Not because I'd lost a house, But because the people who knew exactly what it meant to me, what it had cost me, had done this anyway. My own mother, my sister, maybe even my father. The idea that they had looked at my future, my freedom, and seen it as a solution to their mess. It was the kind of betrayal that lived in your bones. I called Lee. No answer. I tried again. This time she picked up, voice bright. "You home yet? How's the—" "They froze my account." Silence. "They used my name," I choked. "They tied my savings to some loan. A trust. I never signed anything, but they did it. My money's gone." She didn't speak for several seconds, then, "I'm coming over." That evening, Lee sat across from me on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by paperwork, bank printouts, and silent fury. "We'll get it back," she said. "I don't care how." But all I could hear was my mother's voice from the kitchen table. Just a gesture, just on paper. And now, my future had been turned into collateral for someone else's mistakes. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Lee stayed over on my couch, shoes off but blazer still on, her laptop open like a weapon between us. While I sat on the floor, stunned and silent, she toggled through emails, PDFs, and bank statements, her brows knit in that analytical way she gets when something doesn't add up. By 2 a.m., we'd found it. A scanned document filed under a family trust. My name typed neatly on the signature line, a scribble of ink beside it. And it looked like my signature, but not quite. The M in Amanda was wrong, too round. The L in Lane had a loop I never used. "They forged it," I said, voice raw from hours of not speaking. "They actually forged my signature." Lee didn't say, "I'm sorry." She didn't offer hugs or platitudes. She said, "Then we get proof." By noon the next day, we were seated in her office, Lee in full professional mode, me still wearing yesterday's sweater. She had already contacted a paralegal friend to walk us through next steps. Forgery, trust fraud, financial exploitation. The words sounded too dramatic to apply to my life. I'd always associated them with strangers on the news, not with family dinners and home-baked lasagna. But this was real. They'd created a family trust without informing me. They had used it to secure a large loan, one that Kayla and Jake had already defaulted on. And now the bank had locked all assets attached to the trust, including my savings account. It was theft, dressed in paperwork. "They must have accessed your old documents," Lee said, flipping through the scans. "Do you remember ever giving them digital copies of your ID?" I shook my head. Only Mom had access to my tax files. From years ago, maybe when she helped with FAFSA. She nodded grimly. "That's enough. That's all they would have needed." The betrayal pulsed in my chest like a second heartbeat. I thought about Kayla's crocodile tears, my father's silence, my mother's soft voice insisting it was just a gesture. And meanwhile, they had already executed the plan. By the time she asked for my permission, the damage had already been done. They didn't want my blessing. They wanted plausible deniability. Lee had a friend at a boutique law firm downtown. By 4 p.m., we had an appointment set up for the next morning. She also recommended a private investigator, someone who could help trace the document trail, check digital fingerprints, and confirm what we already suspected. My signature had been copied, probably from something innocent. Maybe a school form, a loan co-sign from years ago. It didn't matter how. It mattered that they'd done it. As I watched Lee type out a list of next steps, I felt a strange sensation rise in me, not rage, not even sadness. Focus. Cold, clear, surgical focus. I was going to fight this, and they weren't going to see it coming. That night, I got the final punch. Kayla posted a photo online. A big, cheesy shot of her standing in front of a house, my dream neighborhood, my color palette, my freedom, with the caption, "Finally found home, grateful beyond words." There were likes, comments, congratulatory emojis. Mom had left a string of heart reactions. Dad had commented, "So proud." I stared at the screen for a long time, numb, and then I took a screenshot. Because I would need that later. Proof of what they celebrated while I was still lying on my floor, wondering how they'd gutted my life and called it family. I didn't comment. I didn't react. I simply opened a new note on my phone and typed one word at the top, war. The lawyer's office was colder than I expected. Not temperature-wise, just atmosphere. Polished. Professional. No trace of the chaos I carried in with me, no smell of betrayal, no ache of family collapse. But that's what I liked about it. This wasn't a space for feelings, it was a space for facts, and I had them now. Lee sat beside me, calm and steady, as the attorney Sophia Hartman, a sharp-eyed woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, clicked through the files we'd sent over. When she reached the trust documents, she paused. "This is forged," she said bluntly. You can see the loop on the L, it's copied. The pressure pattern doesn't match the one on your ID, sloppy but common. She scrolled. And this, she tapped the date in the corner. This filing happened 10 days before your mother asked you about the trust. They weren't seeking your consent, they were covering their tracks. My throat tightened, but I nodded. Sophia looked up. You're not the first client I've had with family fraud, but you might be the first one who came this prepared. Credit to Lee for that. Can we fight it? I asked. Sophia's expression didn't change. Absolutely. You have two clear claims, identity fraud and financial exploitation. We'll pursue civil damages first, your funds returned, your name removed, and sanctions against the trust administrators. And the criminal side, she hesitated. That depends. If we file a report, the state could press charges. It's heavy. I want them to feel it, I said quietly. I want them to know they can't take what I've built and pretend it never mattered. Sophia nodded. Then we'll pursue both. The private investigator Lee had hired came through with more than we'd hoped. Phone records, IP logs, even a screen recording pulled from a third-party notarization service showing Kayla submitting the paperwork under my name, wearing a hoodie, mumbling into the camera, clearly nervous. It wasn't just fraud. It was premeditated. My parents' roles were harder to pin down, but emails showed they had access to the trust file. And my father's digital signature appeared on one of the trustee consent forms, days before I'd even known such a trust existed. They hadn't just helped Kayla. They'd orchestrated it. The pieces clicked into place like broken glass, forming a picture I didn't want to see. And still, there it was. The hardest part, they pretended like nothing had happened. Texts from my mom continued, full of casual questions. Did you hear from the lender? Are you coming to Tyler's birthday party? I was thinking we could have lunch soon, just the girls. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, but because I finally understood something. I wasn't in their family anymore. Not really. I was their plan, their resource. And once I stopped playing along, they didn't know what to do with me, so they reverted to the script. Pretend, smile, minimize, move on, but not this time. I stared at the thick folder of case materials on my coffee table that night, pages of evidence, witness statements, financial timelines, and photos of Kayla grinning in front of my stolen dream. And I didn't feel broken. I felt focused. The way an archer must feel when the target finally stops moving. This wasn't just about getting my money back. This was about ending a cycle that had always taught me silence was safer than standing up. I was done being the quiet one. Courtrooms are colder than law offices, more sterile, more deliberate. It's not just the marble floors or the air conditioning that never seems to turn off, it's the emotional temperature. Here, pain is submitted as evidence. Betrayal, documented and cross-examined. Family becomes a case file. I sat beside Sophia, dressed in slate gray, hair pulled back, heart steady. Across the aisle sat Kayla, eyes red-rimmed, her husband Jake whispering in her ear. My mother sat behind them, face drawn but unreadable. My father didn't look up. I wasn't sure what hurt more, that they did this to me or that they were still pretending it wasn't real. The hearing wasn't long. Sophia presented the evidence with surgical precision. The forged signature, the falsified notary log, the email chain proving prior knowledge and involvement, the private investigator's affidavit confirming digital tampering and date manipulation. The judge asked Kayla if she'd like to respond. She stood, her voice cracked. I didn't mean to hurt her, she said. We were desperate. We thought it would just be temporary. That word again. Temporary, like my future was a loaner car, like my name was a napkin at a picnic. The judge wasn't swayed. Intent does not negate harm, he said plainly. And deception among family is still deception. He ruled. My savings were to be restored in full. The trust was dissolved. Kayla's home, bought with stolen collateral, would be seized by the bank. Legal sanctions were issued against both my parents as co-conspirators, including financial penalties and mandatory financial ethics training. They tried to appeal for leniency. My mother stood finally and asked the court to reduce their repayment obligation. Her voice trembled. We've lost our daughter over this, she said. Isn't that punishment enough? I didn't speak. The judge looked at me. Ms. Lane, do you wish to respond? Stood, not to plead, not to scold, just to finish the story. I came here today not for revenge, I said, my voice level, but because I needed to prove to them and to myself that what I built matters, that I matter, that no one, not even family, has the right to erase that for convenience. I turned toward the bench. I'm not asking them to be punished. I'm asking for protection, legal distance, boundaries they can't bend with guilt. He nodded. It's granted. The paperwork took days. The transfer of funds, the freezing of trust accounts, the titled documents to formally reverse the damage. I signed everything without flinching. Then I found a new house, smaller than the first one. Quieter, older, set at the edge of a Minneapolis neighborhood full of maple trees and long front porches. I didn't announce it. No Instagram posts. No group texts. I bought a new welcome mat. It didn't say Homebody HQ this time. It said simply, mine. 2 weeks after moving in, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find my mother standing there holding a box. Inside were old photographs, me and Kayla as children, handprint turkeys, graduation caps. I thought maybe you'd want these, she said. I didn't invite her in, but I took the box. Do you hate me? She asked quietly. No, I said honestly, but I don't trust you. She nodded, eyes glossy. We didn't know how to stop it. I did, I said. That's why I'm here. I keep the photos in a drawer. Sometimes I look at them. Sometimes I don't. They're not proof of love. They're proof of history. And I've learned you can honor where you came from without letting it define where you go. Now on quiet mornings, I water my plants. I check my spreadsheet. I sit on the porch with coffee and a sense of peace that doesn't require validation. Lee still texts me every other day with furniture links and snarky memes. She says she wants to host a fraud-free housewarming party. I said only if the invite says BYOB and BYO boundaries. I'm not the same woman I was 12 weeks ago. I'm still healing, but I'm also whole. And that, finally, feels like home. Have you ever had to cut off someone you love to protect your peace? Comment below. Because sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is choose herself.